Hello, everyone. Namaste. How are you doing?
Greetings, Luang Por.
Greetings, Pizza. How you been?
We've been wonderful, Luang Por. Hope you're keeping well.
Yeah. All is good here.
Wonderful. Thank you for your kindness for giving us a special December edition.
Pleasure. Shall we do the Itipiso 3 times?
Do you want to kind of give it another 30 seconds for the hour for everyone else to come in?
Oh, okay. We have different clocks. Very good.
Yes, please, Luang Por, and we'll do the usual.
And so we could do the Itipiso 3 times?
Yes,
3
please.
rounds?
Yes, please.
And then how about 20 minutes of meditation?
Yes, Luang Por.
Yeah?
Yep.
And then you can ask for a Dhamma talk and so on. Okay?
Thank you, Luang Por. We may begin, Luang Por, when you are ready. We may begin when you're ready.
All right. So we have in the room, hello everyone. Namaste. We are broadcasting from Ontario. So we have Venerable Amasiri, Venerable Vipassi, Venerable Nandano, and Venerable Arinda, and Venerable Nalaka, and Venerable Michelle, and Venerable Niraso. So we're a lovely crowd here. We have good voices, so we're going to chant the Itipiso chant 3 times. And please join us. You'll be muted, but please join us for this triple reflection on the Viradhammo Sangha. And then we'll do 20 minutes of meditation. I'll give some guided meditation, and we'll sit quietly. Itipiso bhagava araham samma sambuddho vichacharana sampano sugato lokavidu anuttaro purisadhamma sarati satta deva manusanam buddho bhagavati savakato bhagavata Dhammo sandetiko akaliko ehipasiko opanayiko pacatam veditamo vinyo hiti supatipanno bhagavato sāvaka sangho ujupatipanno bhagavato sāvaka sangho Nyaya patipanno bhagavato sāvaka sangho Samici patipanno bhagavato sāvaka sangho Yadidam chattari purisa yukani atta purisa pukkala esa bhagavato sāvaka sangho Anuneyo, Pavuneyo, Atakineyo, Anjali Karaniyo, Anuttaram, Punyaketam Lokasadi, Piso Bhagava, Araham Samma Sambuddho Vichacharana Sampano, Sugato lokavidu anuttaro purisadhamma sarati satta eva manusanam buddho bhagavati savakato bhagavata dhammo sanditiko akaliko ehipasiko opanayiko pacatam veditapo vinyo iti supatipanno bhagavato sāvaka sangho ujupatipanno bhagavato sāvaka sangho nyaya patipanno bhagavato sāvaka sangho มิจิปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆยะติตังชาตาริปุริสยุคานิอัตตปุริสปุกกะลาเอสะภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆอาหุเนโยปาหุเนโยตากิเนโยอัญจลิกรัญโยอนุตตรังปุญญาเกตังโลกัสสาติปิสโสภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะสัมปันโนสุขโตโลกวิทูอนุตตรปุริสธัมมัสสารติสัตตะเทวมนุสสานังพุทโธภะคะวะติสวากขาโตภะคะวะตาธัมโมสันติติโกอาคาลิโกเอหิปัสสิโกโอปนัยโกปัจจัตตังเวทิตาโพวิญโยอิติสุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆอุจุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆญาณปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสามีจิปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆยะติตังชาตาริปุริสยุคานิอัตตปุริสปุกกะลาเอสะภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆอาหุเนโยปาหุเนโยนาคิเนโยอัญจลิกรัญโยอนุตตรังปุญญาเกตังโลกัสสาติ So let's meditate together. We'll do about 20 minutes. I'll give some instruction and then I'll be quiet and you can sit, prepare the minds in silence. Beta, my sound is okay?
Yes, Luang Por. Can you hear us well? Good, very good. Thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah. So, how are you doing? How does it feel where you are? Hot, cold, confused or tranquil, noisy, quiet, whatever it is. How does it feel? A good place to start is sound. So notice sound. Listen in a receptive way. And then notice the silence of awareness. So the traffic could be noisy, but awareness knows noise, so awareness is silent. Make conscious the feelings in your body. Go to the face. Let the feelings in the mouth become conscious. So just as you can listen to sound in a receptive way, you can feel the body in a receptive way. So what does the mouth feel like? And there's vibration or some kind of feeling. And the mind silently knows. It's the same silence, different object. Make conscious the feelings around your ears. So I'm not asking you to concentrate. I'm just asking you to localize your attention. Let the physical sensations come into consciousness. So you're cultivating receptive awareness and noticing the silence of that receptivity. Bring attention to the nose, the bridge of the nose, the nostrils. Let that become conscious. Now don't tighten your eyes looking for something. Just let it come into consciousness. And the same silent knowing. Your eyes, the eye sockets, the eyes themselves. So notice our attention isn't to get something, but it is to notice what is. Not as a concept, but just the physical experience of eyes, mouth, and so on. Feel your temples. And feel the top of your head. Now feel the whole head as a mass of sensations, vibrations. And notice that that is in awareness, in silent knowing. Listen to sound. And notice that sound is in awareness. Feel your shoulders, arms, hands. Let that become conscious. And the same silent knowing. Make conscious the feelings at the chest, the ribs, clothing on the chest, the lungs, the abdominal area, lower ribs, lower spine, all the organs in that area. Again, you're not trying to find anything, you're noticing what is, and the same silent receptive awareness. Pelvic area, pelvic bones, the organs in the pelvic area. Hips, thighs, knees, lower legs, feet. Then the whole body, feel the whole body awareness, not as concept, but as changing sense experience in awareness. Listen to sound. Notice that sound is in awareness. Notice the body, and the body's in awareness. Be that awareness. You could just leave it there and sit in awareness, with awareness, as awareness. Or you could localize your attention to help keep track of the present moment. So feel the breathing of the body. Let the breath become conscious. Still knowing for one in breath. And still knowing for one out breath. Okay, I'll leave you with those suggestions and let's just sit quietly.
Good evening, Luang Por. Can you hear me?
Shunzian, please go ahead.
Yes, Luang Por. Brahmajaloka Dipati Sahampati Katanjalihan Tiwarang Ayachata Santi Dasata Paraja Kajatika Ese Tudamang Anukam Pimam Paja.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So blessings, everyone, wherever you are. Here at the monastery, it's all quite peaceful. We had a lovely snowfall last week or a few days ago. It's all melting now. So all the usual changes of the weather entering into winter. Ourselves, we're sort of winding down our work projects. We have a 3-month winter retreat, January, February, March. So one of the kutis is being finished. Books are getting finished, and all manner of things are getting finished, but the monastery never really gets finished. But in any case, we try to put away the projects, put away the tools, and dedicate 3 months to meditation practice, which is quite a privilege to be a monk. But it's also our duty to develop the meditative life, the contemplative life, and reach hopefully some deeper understanding of the Buddhist teaching, so that we can be better people, so that we can honor the Buddha's recommendation for the bhikkhu life, and also obviously that we can share some insights and somehow be helpful, and maybe create a sanctuary, like this monastery is a sanctuary for animals and people, where people can come and where the monastery is not caught up with the politics of the day and all of that, and people can feel at ease. But of course, during COVID, that's not been possible. It's been a different kind of experience. And the Buddhist teaching on meditation obviously doesn't cover everything. There's so much more in the world than just meditation. So I think of like to meditate, to be a contemplative, you have to have quite a lot of bharami or goodness going in your life. You need enough food, you need shelter, you need clothing, you need medicine, you need safety, you need social safety, political safety, stability. All those things it's very hard to meditate if you're starving or there's a war around you and all the rest of it. So to be able to do this is a great good fortune. And then to remember that if we can also help others to have enough food and to have shelter and so on, that helps them to realize some kind of peace and some kind of reflective capacity to contemplate Dhamma. So I'm when I think of, say, the Firefly Mission in Singapore, all the beautiful work that you do, helping rebuilding the schools in Burma after the flooding, and work in Cambodia, and the Dhammagiri Foundation, where you help Ajahn Chagino with that orphanage and monastery, and then the Angel Group who took up that initiative to bring, he had 50 doctors over 3 or 4 days at Mahong Son and treated 1,200 people for all kinds of ailments. And then our own Flora Libich here, who does the work with the Peaceful Children's Home in Cambodia. These are really beautiful initiatives that you find in any culture. It doesn't have to be a Buddhist culture, and that giving forth of generosity and giving forth of one's time and energy and expertise is very important for the meditative life, because that honest giving, that sincere giving, it's not a duty, is it? When I have a chance to serve, it's not so much coming from duty, it's coming from a place of opportunity, actually. Oh, I have a chance to serve. And so this is one of the things that I often reflect to our community, our monks here. When I first went to Thailand, and people would offer me food in my bowl, and I'd feel embarrassed, or people would bow, and I'd say, thank you for the food. The Thai people say, no, you can't say thank you. We're grateful to you for giving us this opportunity to serve and to help. And I thought, wow, I never thought of it that way. I never really thought of it that way. So it's, being a Canadian, it's very hard not to say thank you. The joke in Canada is that Canadians will actually thank the ATM machine when they get their money. So we're really into thank you, but just the spirit of the opportunity to give as something that one is grateful for. And I found, caring for my mother was that same way. I took care of my mom for a few years when she was very old, and the more I remember that, the more I realized what an opportunity that was to care for her, to really care for her, right? And really in a very, very full-on, hands-on way. And I could see for her, she didn't have the opportunity to care for me. And she missed that because she didn't have the energy. So that sense of generosity then is it's the foundation for the spiritual life, isn't it? And that, of course, is conjoined with the foundation in moral restraint, not harming, not hurting, being honest in relationships and so on, being sober and all the rest of it. So when fellows like me, I like to talk about meditation, but I'm always assuming that the folk listening to this kind of a talk have that in place, that somehow they have a lifestyle where these aspects of the Buddhist, or this aspect of any good life, really, it doesn't even have to be Buddhist, but these aspects of generosity and morality are very fundamental to their lifestyles. Because without that, then meditation could be just a sort of kind of even a selfishness, could be that. But within a lifestyle of morality and generosity, I think all of us yearn for stillness, even if we don't have an opportunity to do humanitarian work, even if we're just surviving from day to day, or even if we have an opportunity to do a lot of humanitarian work, all of us has this yearning for peace and stillness and silence. And when we taste that, we all think, yeah, I'd like a bit more of that. Thank you very much. And all of us also want to be free from the kind of seemingly endless cycles of the emotional turmoil or the kind of suffering of the inner world. So these are common themes that the Buddha points to. Also, I guess in these kinds of talks, so I assume people are honoring the precepts and living a life of generosity. I also assume, I think, that they have a basic understanding of the Four Noble Truths, that you have to have some kind of intellectual grasp of the Buddhist teachings to understand the Forest tradition, because from the Forest tradition, we usually speak spontaneously from the feeling in the heart, and there's a kind of assumption that the basic foundations, the Four Noble Truths, are understood by the listener. If I went to a school and kids didn't know anything about Buddhism, I would, introduce some basic things like that. So that's one of the assumptions I make. Also, if I'm talking about meditation, I also assume that people have, they're serious about meditation, that it's not just a kind of trivial thing that you pick up every week once, for 15 minutes, that actually there's a serious intent and serious dedication to meditation practice, because you really, anything you do, whether it's craft or accounting or whatever doctoring, whatever you have to put time into it. You have to really develop the craft, and the craft of the heart or the craft of meditation doesn't come easy. Very few people find it easy. So it does take a kind of dedication of time. So with all that in place, with all those assumptions, so if you're a newbie to this, please excuse me if you don't know what I'm talking about. So there is possibility in our human experience to touch something that is always there, a deep silence, a peacefulness which is not dependent on experience, an island, a refuge, a harbor, and that possibility is the really, I think, why we're meditating. We're not just meditating to tranquilize the mind or just to solve our problems, but to come to that realization again and again and again. So two of the things that when people ask me, what would you consider to be signs of progress in your meditation? And I would say it's confidence and the ability to repeat, the ability to do this again and again and again. So there's a kind of confidence and a competence. And the confidence comes from insight. And the competence comes from being able to repeat that insight again and again and again. Now, you might think that, well, success in meditation would mean that every time I sit down, I feel peaceful. Then you'd be in trouble. Because maybe you have the flu, maybe you had a bad business meeting or whatever. But if confidence is not about if confidence is about insight or understanding, then that should be something that's applicable all the time. And if that's a true understanding, then you should be able to apply it again and again and again and get similar results, I would say. Now, if you think that like meditation is reaching some kind of state of peacefulness that you manipulate and you get and you create and you form, and you can do it every time, then you can feel very frustrated. Because the nature of our emotions, the nature of our bodies and so on is that we are subject to all kinds of things, pain, and any given meditation is always very, very different. So I wouldn't see meditation as a tranquilizing of the mind or an attempt to get a particular state of mind, but it's the noticing of something that we tend not to notice. When you meditate, one of the things you find you do is, let's say you choose to do the breath, or you choose to do metta bhavana, or whatever you do, and then you find yourself thinking. And then what people do is they perceive themselves as the thinker, and then they try to get rid of thinking. Now, thinking, it's not that you are thinking deliberately. Thinking is a natural phenomena that comes into consciousness through memory. Now, we are memory beings, so I need memory to know that this is a clock and that this is water, so my whole perceptual life is built up of memory. I need functional memory to know that I'm Viradhammo, that I'm a senior monk here, that my room is over there, and so on. If I didn't have that, then I'd have dementia. So that's all ordinary functional memory. But what happens in meditation is that some memory gets stimulated, and that memory comes up into consciousness, and then a bunch of thinking takes off from there. And that thinking is very much narrative thinking, storyline thinking. So for instance, if I had a meeting with someone and it was, let's say I had a job interview and the job interview maybe didn't go well, and then I start to meditate, then I get a memory of that job interview and that it didn't go well. And the mind runs into narratives and stories, right? I should have said this, or I should have said that, I shouldn't have done this and I shouldn't have done that. Or maybe I plan to go to Thailand next year and I'm looking at flights and I'm thinking, oh, is it gonna, will the vaccine come out? And then I meditate and then the memory of that comes up. And there I am, I'm in Thailand, I'm planning. So these kinds of memories are what we call narrative memories or storyline memories. And when you're a meditator, I think what happens is you notice the storyline and you say to yourself, I'm thinking too much. So you kind of blame yourself. And what we don't see, or what we need to see, and this is part of the insight of coming to the peace of mind, that thought is simply stimulated, this kind of thought is stimulated through memory. So if you begin to see that link that this is just memory, I mean, it's a very simple thing, but if you begin to notice memory as an object in your meditation, rather than perceive yourself as the person who shouldn't be thinking, you begin to let go of what we call self-perception. You begin to see the dharma of thought. You see thought as thought. You see memory as memory. And that you need to train in that. You need to make that suggestion to yourself. So you can do that like in meditation. You can say to yourself, as I'm meditating on the breath or whatever, I'm going to notice memory. I'm going to see how memory creates thought or something like that. You don't have to say much, but you do have the intention behind them. And as you're meditating, you'll get better and better at noticing with this memory, you get this train of thought. So what happens there is that what you're really encouraging is awareness you're discouraging the tendency to try to get rid of thought or to do something about the thought or analyze the thought. Now that's the kind of first step. Now once you can see that happening, what you begin to see is that the very sense of a narrative creates a sense of a person, and that person is in time. It's like me going from the past to the future. So if you're observing your thinking mind as you're meditating, you'll notice the difficulty of actually staying in the present moment. Your mind will going past, future, past, future, past, future, and it just keep doing that all the time. And if you can see that actually in that moment when you notice thinking, the perception of time, that's all it is. That idea that you are a person in time, moving through time, is just the perception, and that the knowing is always there. So what we do is we think we have not been aware, and we identify with self, but self is not permanent. Self is an in and out thing. It's born and dies, but knowing is always there. Awareness is always there. And we don't realize that because we identify with the thinking. We identify with the narrative, and then we make another narrative of the fellow who has to get rid of thinking. So if you can then, like when you notice the narrative and notice that perception that I have been thinking is a definition of self in time, you will also notice that the knowing is always there. The knowing was never away. It was never lost. It never went anywhere. It was always there. And that brings you to the deep silence of the mind. In that knowing, you see, well, that knowing is always there. The thoughts of self come and go. The identity of self come and go, because that's all self is. Your real home is that deep silence. And we don't notice it because our attention is out into trying to fix the object, trying to fix the thinking, trying to get rid of the thinking. So then what do? As maybe we really try hard to hold on to the object of meditation. Oh, we try really hard, which is okay, but attention is still on an object. And you don't notice actually that the knowing is not an object. It's the still silence. The still knowing is always there. And because it's always there, and because it's not dependent on an object, we fail to notice that because we think that the object of our experience is pleasure, becoming something, getting rid of something. And so it's like you have to turn around and look back at awareness itself. Once you start to, and this is where I would say right understanding and confidence comes. You begin to see that meditation isn't about an object, it's about the knowing. And as you get that understanding, it's ephemeral in the beginning. It's just like a taste, it's not so strong, but you get that sense of it doesn't really matter if it's sound or breath or emotion or pain. It doesn't really matter. It's about the knowing. It's about the knowing. And as you then see the narratives of self blossom into mind, you see, well, that's just memory and habit. That's all it is. And then you see, well, that knowing has been there all the time. Through that, you touch the silence of the mind. You touch it really very profoundly in that moment, because that's the gap. In that moment, there's a gap, an entryway into that silence, which is always there. If, however, your attention is always outwards, and now we need to pay attention. If you're doing humanitarian work, you need to do humanitarian work. You need to pay attention. You need to organize things. You need to do a lot of work. So I'm not saying that our whole life is this, but because much of our life is always out, we don't know how to rest the mind. We find it difficult to actually rest the mind, because even when we meditate, our mind is churning over the problems of the day, and then we try to get rid of that and so on. But if you begin to see that this movement from past to future, defining self, is simply a perception. I am someone who is thinking too much, is a perception in time. And if you see that's just an object, then you're taken to the silence, to the harbor. And that is a very profound and deep silence. And that's where you get this sort of the skillfulness the skillfulness of remembering this same insight. So it's not the same as like, you kind of get really, really like skillful at controlling something. Say, if I'm doing woodwork, like this year I've used a router a lot, and I get much more skillful at using a router or a chisel or a saw. Okay, that's the usual way we look at proficiency in craft, right? That I can take an object and I can control it and manipulate it to give me a result. This is important. This is how we make, if we don't have any skills, we can't do humanitarian work. We can't feed the family, we can't feed ourselves. So that's important. But then if you try to translate that into meditation, then you're always the doer trying to hold something, organize something to create this good result called peace. You might be able to do that for a while, but as soon as the causes and conditions are not there, it falls apart. So what people sometimes, they'll have a good meditation, right? And then they'll try to repeat that good meditation for days and days and days and years and years and years even on a retreat. They'll have I had a really great meditation. So they think it's about an experience, getting an experience, and their minds are outwards looking for the experience. And if the experience is not what they hope and expect and want, then they struggle with that. They try to get rid of it. And one of the common things we try to get rid of is we try to get rid of thought. Thought is natural. Thought's just a consequence of being intelligent and so on. But there is an avenue that is not dependent on thought that we can begin to see behind thought, and so that's the deep silence. So when I'm suggesting, I don't know if this makes any sense to you, but when I'm suggesting that when like I say, listen, the way I teach meditation, listen to sound. And what am I doing there? I'm not asking you to really worry about the sound itself. I'm asking you to notice the stillness of knowing. Yeah. And then I say, feel the body. And then it's the same stillness of knowing, isn't it? Now that same stillness of knowing is there when thought is moving, but we tend to be so stuck onto the whole self-thinking, the self-narrative, me and what I was and what I will be. And that's all driven by habit, the habit of worry, the habit of fantasy, the habit of doubt, whatever. So not only do you have memory in a very basic sense, stimulating thought, you have 20, 30 years of habit stimulating anxious thoughts, 20, 30 years of habit stimulating resentful thought or fantasy thought or whatever it is. So it's not so easy to notice this. But if you kind of begin to trust that it's not fixing the anxiety, you're not trying to fix your emotions, that you can do through therapy or through counseling or whatever. Okay, that's okay. But this isn't so much trying to get the perfect emotional construct or to have a loving feeling all the time. No, these are good things. Love is good and so on. But this is something transcendent, not transcendent in the way that you float away from life, but within life, within the complexity of life, within the complexity of your habits and all of that, there's always this deep silence, right? And it's noticed when you notice that thought is an object, that it's the time itself is an object. And why is it that we can only know the present moment? We can see the consequences of past and future. We can see the winter changes to the summer and so on and so forth. But we can only know the present moment, and we don't contemplate that. We identify with past and future, and so our thoughts run. So if you just look at a day's activity, mental activity, how much of it is useful? And how much of it is just mulling over the future or regretting the past? Now, as a contemplative, what you're trying to do is not just in meditation, but in ordinary life, when life is not demanding your concentration, demanding your attention, and life is just very neutral and the mind floats away, we're trying to see that this deep silence is there too, It's always there. It's not something that's just limited to meditation. Peace, which is limited to meditation, you can do that. Sure, people do that. They control their minds, they control environments, and they build a structure of stillness and silence, which then they can hold and maintain when all the conditions are there. That's certainly how I started. And so I'd have some kind of beatific experiences, and it kind of felt really, really good, and so on and so forth. But then when the causes and conditions weren't there, you know, when I had to work or had to relate in a more complex ways and so on, then of course the peace wasn't there. And I realized, well, that peace was a constructed thing. It was built up from sense deprivation, from constantly focusing on the breath or whatever I was doing. And so not letting any sense input come in. And so the result was very tranquilized, but it wasn't free. It was dependent. It was nice, but I soon realized, well, so what? So I spend 10 days tranquilizing the mind, and then I get out of that environment, the causes and conditions aren't there, then same old, same old. I began to see that for me, at least, I don't know about you, that for me didn't make any sense, because the ideas of Buddhist liberation are that they're not constructed. This isn't a constructed experience. So what is not constructed? Right? You think about it, your emotions are constructs, dependently originated, your body, social environments, whole sense of self as a construct, right? What isn't? What is not constructed? And that's that still knowing. That's why it's transcendent. So then you begin to see that even within emotional turmoil, you can begin to see, well, emotional turmoil is in awareness. You still feel the body maybe with its emotional turmoil. It'll still want to create thoughts of emotional turmoil. But what happens is the sort of, what is it? It's the what's the word? It's the intense feeling that I have to fix this. The kind of intense identification with this, that begins to fall away, because you see that it's just dependently originated. It's just memory and habit, and it has an energy, and if you don't feed it, it dies out. And so the kind of worry about all of this, the kind of self-fearfulness around it, the concern, and that begins to fall away, and it's no big deal. It's just emotional turmoil. It's just pain, right? Because why? Because now you understand that the real refuge is not emotional. It's not social. It's not physical. It's not environmental. We have to deal with all those, sure, but it's something much more profound. And it's not constructed. It's not made up, because it's always there. And that's the only thing that makes sense to me about the Buddha's teachings on enlightenment. If it's something that's made up and constructed, then it'll die, won't it? So what is not born and not dying? And that's that still knowing, which is always there. So a reference point is no longer going out into sense experience, but it's looking at the knowing itself, being aware of awareness. So then we have both. We have humanitarian life. We have ethical life. We have social responsible life, right? So in the monastery, here we try to create an environment where men can train, where lay people can come and join us. We try to take care of the animals, and we have all the problems of any worldly concern. We have an infestation of gypsy moths and caterpillars, which chewed up a lot of our trees, and we have ticks, and we have Lyme's disease, and we have snow, and we have ice, and we have deer, and we have porcupines, and we have humans. And we have all the, the ordinary stuff of existence, and we try to do the best we can. So that's one part of our life. And that's the social part of our life. And that's very, very important to try to do that well. But then that other part, what is the spiritual part of our life? What is that? Is that emotional just? Is it just about like loving everyone all the time? Or is it even more profound than that? Are not like generosity, compassion, kindness, honesty. These are the methods, I would say, the methodology for understanding this, for noticing, not understand, well, understanding, yeah, but also noticing. It's an understanding that is noticed. And so, like the monastery, its existence, say, the work we do here, and we work hard, both on our meditation and to make this a good place. That's the method. I don't expect the monastery ever to be finished. I've been building monasteries or part of monasteries my whole life, and it's never going to be finished. People are never finished, right? There's always going to be problems and difficulties and harmony and disharmony and that. And yet you have to do your best, don't you? But the doing your best is the method. Generosity is the method. Compassion is the method. And what does that do? That creates a foundation of confidence, to some extent joy, right? And then from that foundation, or from that method, you begin to abide with an interest in something which is not dependent. What is not dependent? What is not dependent originated? It was not constructed. And so that's a kind of contemplative question you ask yourself to make yourself really bright and attentive into the present moment. What is it that doesn't change? So if my attention is like into thinking, that changes. So what's unchanging? And if you can get that question in as you're meditating, rather than, oh, I'm thinking too much, ask yourself, was I really unaware? You know what you were thinking. You know that you were thinking about yesterday or tomorrow. That knowing is there. But you perceive the sense of self as being something permanent. That's what's impermanent. It's a kind of opposite kind of thing. So then the question, if you put this kind of contemplative question to yourself as you're meditating, now obviously, a lot of people won't get this, but this is really, to me, it seems the heart of the Buddha's realization is that question, like, okay, in this experience, what's unconstructed, what's unchanging? What does not begin and end? And that question you cannot answer through thought. You can't try, but you just get another question. That question brings you to silence. And then you see, well, is it not that silent knowing itself? The question is its answer. This is the kind of paradox of it. And then when you start to get confidence in that, you also get the skill. You get the skill of returning, the ability to repeat that, because it does work. And it isn't dependent on your emotional state. So then your meditation starts to not be bothered with like pain or emotional turmoil or thought. That's just some stuff. Some stuff is going on. You're not trying to control things or get rid of things, but you're just remembering, oh, there is the knowing. And that kind of returning into that silent place, or remembering that silent place. So it's a different use of memory, not memory as me, self-narrative, but now remembering that silence, always there, has to be the only way it makes sense. So there's some ideas for you to contemplate. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's the kind of stuff I enjoy. Remember, it's in the context of good living. It's not just sort of some kind of abstract, sort of a real. Beta, are there any questions from folk?
Luang Por, would you like to open the floor to direct questions now? Because they're not coming from the spreadsheet.
Yeah, we could open to the floor.
Okay, thank you, Luang Por. Perhaps Sun Xiang, could you do the Anumodana for Sun Xiang?
Yes, let's all say 3 sadhus together. Handamayam o vadakatha sadhu karang kadama se. Sadhu,
sadhu, sadhu, anumodami.
everyone. You're welcome to ask Luang Por a direct question. If you have any question, we invite you to please click on the raise hand button, which is a digital palm on your Zoom panel. If you do not know where to find it, it is under the participants panel where your name is, and then there is a blue palm. If you can click on that, we can see you. Please wait to be unmuted, and please ensure that your video is on and your name is displayed so that Luang Por can see you. Our request, please, to keep your question to the practice, short, succinct, and clear, so that we can take as many questions as possible during this short as well as a valuable session with Luang Por. So I can see that we have our first participant, Relay.
Can you come?
Relay?
Yes, thank you, Vita. Sister Vita. Thank you, Luang Por, for the most profound and deep teaching. So on the silent, Luang Por mentioned about maintaining the skill. So the question is, when you find the silence, and obviously, you need to keep going back to it, being mindful to go back to it. But how do we practice when we struggle against difficult emotions such as grief or fear, lack of self-confidence, nervousness, emotions, difficult emotions like that? Thank you, Luang Por.
Yeah, that's a very important question, because there's a lot of the work in the methodology or the foundation of understanding the peace of the heart is actually like a purification. And certainly I've been through a lot of negative emotions that I just had to endure. And I think that, okay, if you can get the perspective that this is not your creation, right? That it's not your fault, but it is something that you have to witness because it's a part of nature. If you can get out of that sense that you have to fix it, that you are wrong, or that it's eternal, that can can be very threatening. And how can you objectify it rather than be the subject of it? And then, so part of that is like body awareness, but part of that is an attitude. Okay, if this has got to be here, I'm willing to be with it. And that is the idea of metta bhavana, the willingness to be with the unbearable, the willingness to witness something which is seemingly endless. And so for myself, I just use the word vipaka kamma. I say this is resultant kamma. Sometimes I can see it from childhood. Sometimes I can't see where it's really coming from. And then I just say, okay, give me more. I couldn't do that many, many years ago. But now if something comes up, I say, oh, I know you. Yeah. Oh, yeah, come on in. Come on in, grief. I saw you last week. Or, oh, panic attack. Oh, I haven't seen you for 5 years. Come on in. It sounds facetious, but you can see how these difficult habits of emotion, and they are habits, they've just been like the mind has been conditioned and trained in ways we sometimes don't understand to respond through these energy forms, which have a kind of narrative to it. So if you can see that it's not so much a problem as something that needs to be understood and endured. If you can get that perspective, then it becomes more objective. How do you make it objective? Well, you have to get behind the narrative. So the narrative of anxiety is what I'm going to do, what's going to happen, I don't know if I'm up for it, and blah, 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 blah. That's the storyline, right? And then if you can repeat the story, like say, the world is going to fall apart, and then stop. or feel it in the body, somehow to see this is an object in awareness. That's the trick, that this is an object in awareness rather than you being the subject. That's the basic insight of this is Dharma, this is the Dharma of fear, as opposed to I'm afraid what's going to happen. So if you can then see the object in the subjective way, and you develop like strong body awareness. Body awareness is fabulous for this, because these strong emotions have strong components in the heart chakra, in the belly, in the breathing, in your brain. You feel the vibrations. You get better and better at perceiving these powerful habits, and they are powerful energy habits as bodily formations. Now, when you like, if you know, I often talk about fear, but when I experienced fear a lot and I thought about fear, the thought of fear wasn't the physical experience of fear, right? It's different. And it's actually much more difficult to go to the bodily sensation of fear rather than the mental construct of fear, because the construct is trying to get you away from the very, very visceral feel you're feeling. So thought is trying to get you away through doubt, through worry or whatever. But what we're trying to get is we're trying to get to the pre-thinking of these powerful energies. So when I say notice the body as body, right? Now you can do that in like if you're meditating and you start to get discomfort, physical discomfort, you can see the difference between thinking about the physical discomfort. Should I move? Should I not move? What's wrong? Where is it wrong? To actually the experience of physical discomfort. That's not a thought. The actual physical experience. You move when you want to move, but see that difference. And you know, like take something very, very ordinary, like sound and the description of sound. That's different, isn't it? That's a car. That's an airplane. That's loud. That's a lawnmower. That's the description. But what is it before I describe it? It is what it is. And that kind of attention, if you train yourself in that kind of attention, you kind of get the idea of how to do it. So that's this idea of receptive awareness. So then when the emotional components come up, like the really strong, powerful energies that we're conditioned into, the fears and anxieties, then can you do the same with that emotional uprising, upwelling, as you did with the sound of the lawnmower or the airplane, not identified as through thought, but actually, can you see it before you start to think about it? Now, you know, the emotions, and like, if I hear like a coyote outside, you know, I might be concerned that the doors are closed or something like that. Or there's a bear I'm concerned about. I'm not talking about, you know, like not functioning through biological fears and so on, but just the kind of conditioning that we have around these things. They're the things that create the self-narratives, aren't they? You know, the habits of my conditioning, whether they're habits of arrogance or habits of fear or whatever, that's where the self-narrative spins out. And if you can see that self-narrative is not the actual experience. It's something added to the experience. So you start to get behind the self-narrative, the story, the thinking, to the very experience. Then you begin to abide as witness and not attached to that. So two things happen. The tendency begins to die out. You're not feeling it. And your refuge in awareness becomes more confident. You know that even this you can be aware of. This takes a lot of work. I don't know, you know, I don't know if any monks who don't, you know, have to do a lot of work on this. And some monks think they have no problems. They're the ones I'm really worried about. You know, they come at you and they think, I've got no problems. It's his problem. And you think, oh gosh, all right. But they're the real, you know, they're the problem ones. But if you're awake to this stuff, then you realize this is the process of liberation. And the process is one of being willing to bear witness to this vipaka kamma, whatever it is, If you have confidence and trust in awareness, you can do it. If you don't have confidence and trust and awareness, it's what do I do? Replace it, get rid of it, get something else. Now, again, as I always say, this is just in the normal emotional tone that we all experience. If someone has post-traumatic stress disorder, or they have serious psychological damage or whatever, then they need special therapies and help, because it's not visible to them, it's not obvious to them. This kind of work, you have to be pretty resilient and fairly okay to be able to bear witness to this. And then you see it's okay. This is why you need a good lifestyle and good friends. You see, well, actually I'm safe and it's okay. It's okay. Everything's okay. Actually, I can be with this. I can witness this. You need that. If you're unsafe or whatever, then it's very, very hard to do. So like in monastic life, if a person is coming up with something, we say, well, you don't have to be happy, but you have to be polite. So they have to be able to function in a polite way, but they don't have to be happy. So when, and it always comes up, when the material of resentment or fear comes up and they want to project it onto all their brothers, we say, no, that's your mind, it's not us. But can you bear witness to it? Huh? So there's a need to be kind and respectful to other beings, and yet the upwelling can be very disrespectful, can be arrogant, can be whatever. But the form of the Vinaya, the cultural form is, no, we respect each other. And that's quite interesting in monastic life, where you any life, family life, where you witness something very negative, but you don't act it out. You don't blame it. You don't dump it on others, because you have mindfulness. You know this now. If a person's dumping this on others, then they don't understand. Then they need to be say, hey, don't do that. Don't do that. So I've, the more I've, over the years, the kind of, especially around fears and resentments and things like that, I've realized that I was really lucky to be conscious of fear. I meet some people, you can see there's a lot of fear in them, but they're not conscious of it. It's like you can see underneath them that they're, something is driving them, but they're not aware of it. So actually to be fully conscious of these negativities is not a bad thing. I would say it's not a bad thing. It's not a pleasant thing. Certainly it's not a pleasant thing. I certainly don't wish it. Happy Christmas, may you have a year of fear. But rather see it as that because you are aware of it, there's something very powerful and wholesome in your spiritual life that you can witness to it. The fact that you don't blame it on others and that you take responsibility for it, that you can bear witness to it, is something very, that there's a lot of barami going on there. You'd think barami or virtuous quality means you never have anything, right? You're just cool, always compassionate. Yeah, I suppose. But who has that? Who has that? Ajahn Chah didn't have that, right? Ajahn Sumedho, none of us. So see it as purification and also strengthening of this knowing, trusting in knowing. Okay, that was a long answer. Another question, anyone?
Thank you, Luang Por. If there are further questions, please raise your hand. Okay, we have our next question from Shraddha at Nepal. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you, Luang Por.
Hi, Shraddha.
I have a follow-up question to the last question. So sometimes I find that there are certain emotions and you're trapped in it. And while you're trapped in it, you don't even know you're trapped in it. And then once you know you're trapped in it, then you can do a lot of things you suggested, like bring it to full awareness and things. But
you're freezing up on me a bit.
I'm sorry? Oh. Can you hear me?
You're coming in and out, but keep going. Keep going.
Oh. So my question
Can you
was,
type out your question? It might be easier because I'm losing your internet, or yeah, you're freezing up on us there. Can you see if she's typing
turn
that?
the video off. Shraddha, you turn your video off and then you could just keep your audio on.
can you hear me now?
Yeah, now I can hear you. There you go.
Oh,
Give it a go.
So Luang Por, I was going to ask a question that's a follow-up to the last question. So
Right.
sometimes we find that there's some strong emotions and then we're kind of trapped inside that emotions and we don't even know we're trapped in it. So we have like some anger and we're in that thought and we don't even know we're in it. And then once we know, then we can do what you suggested about bringing it to full consciousness, seeing how it feels in the body, all of this. But sometimes we're just in the trap and don't even know we're in the trap. How can we know that we're,
Well,
I don't know if it makes sense what I'm.
Oh no, it makes a lot of sense. I think we've all been there. So that's the human condition, is being overwhelmed by these stuff. So one thing is precepts. You know, have boundaries, have kalyana mitta who remind you and help you in being aware. And then if you get, you know, lost, then at some point when you awaken, be careful not to create a self-disparaging sense of self, right? So let's say I get lost in anger and I call Venerable Amarsyri a turkey, which I'm not supposed to do as a monk. This is not good. So I call him a turkey and then I gain mindfulness again and then I feel regret and remorse, right? It's a good thing. And I apologize, sorry. My apologies. But then, I don't know about you, I could go into a whole train of self-thinking. Why am I like that? I shouldn't be like that, which is just more thought. So whenever you notice that this is the way it is now, then again, bring up gratitude. You know how I talk, oh, great, I'm back now, rather than, oh, I was lost and called my brother a horrible thing. You know, kind of, you know, I'm being facetious, but being lost like that is not your fault, right? It's just the way the mind's conditioned. But your opportunity then is that awakened moment. Now, so the question is, how can you make that awakened moment something which is radiant for the next moment, rather than regretting the last moments? So that's the trick, is when the moment arises that you know the way things are, how do you create the second moment? And that's not by getting rid of anything, but by welcoming the way it is. So the more you can make that statement, this is the feeling of having been lost in an emotion, then you're establishing that moment and another moment, another moment. If in that moment you say, oh God, I'm so pathetic, I'm hopeless, I called him a, what did I call him? And so on and so forth, then I'm lost in a sense of self. So don't create a sense of self in the moment of awakening. Just know this is the feeling. Now, when you have a feeling you've been lost, you create time and you create self. So I would suggest that moment is the moment where you go beyond time into the present moment. And sometimes you can be through emotional turmoil and you don't buy into the whole sense of I was terrible and this might happen. What am I going to do? And you just notice that perception of me having lost the plot is simply a perception of self, and the mind opens up sometimes. That's all you can do. That's all you can do. But those moments do build up. Just have they're frustrating, I know, because you know what's really, it's embarrassing, isn't it? You know the path, you know the work, and you get lost. It's very, very disappointing. But what are you going to do? You kind of start again. precepts are good and so on, but how do you start again? Do you start with a sense of, oh, it's like this is the feeling of failure, say, or this is a feeling of this is hopeless, I'm not getting anywhere. All of those will create the sense of self and time. But that perception of self that I got lost is simply a perception, and it can be known. Keep going back to that. A feeling of hopelessness is like this. I'm not getting anywhere in my practice is like this. And there's the silence. And then do it for 20 years. Okay, is that all right, Shraddha? Yeah, okay. Any other questions?
Thank you, Luang Por. Would you be okay to take another question?
Happily, yes.
Okay, we have one more from Fleming. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you so much, Luang Por, for the profound teaching. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
And I'm wondering, how can we practice the silence of mind during the daily life?
It's very difficult, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you can, okay, like you spend a lot of time looking at, most of us look at computer screens, right? If you develop the kind of discipline where you learned how to look at the 50 emails that you have to do, and then you just stopped and you just felt, oh, this is the feeling of being overwhelmed, or this is a feeling of being busy. You know, just those little interspaces into the busyness of life. It's a kind of deliberate stopping. And it's not even so much the silence, it's the knowing. That's the first step. It's the knowing of what's going on. So the whole idea of right work, say, is not rushing to get things finished. And yet our society is one of there's too many things and not enough time in the day to do it. So if you can look at your work life and look at how much of your work life is geared to always running to a future deadline or running to get something finished. Now, sure, you have deadlines and you don't have enough time to do them. But if you can make that very becoming mind, that mind which is always going to the future, as an object of awareness. So just like a simple thing, like going from like to a store and buying something, trying to get to the store rather than just walking to the store at the same pace. It can be the same pace. So those spaces in your life where you're not compelled to concentrate, the in-between spaces where you're on a bus or you're waiting for an appointment, those are the spaces you can try to cultivate in the sense of, life is like this now. In those spaces of where you're not compelled to be something or do something, quite often the mind just wanders off, thinks about this and thinks about that. But I think the most productive way to develop silence throughout the day is a very good morning meditation practice. And I always recommend this. If your morning meditation is one that's developing confidence and you understand what the silence of the mind is, that will begin to play out throughout the day. That'll just start to click in because you're creating the causes for remembering that. So a really robust morning practice where you get up before the family gets up, if you can, if your health allows it, and so on. And you really get this insight of that the knowing, the silence is always there. You get that kind of going as a profound thing in your life, then that will begin to click in. It really will. So you have to create some kind of non-busy situation where this can be noticed, because if life is just busy all the time and you don't give space to that understanding, realization, noticing, then of course it's not going to be noticed in the busyness of life. But if you can carve out a really good morning practice, then you'll want to go there through the day. You want to be there because it's very attractive. It won't be a kind of discipline when you're trying to silence your mind. But having said that, also I think, like if you have a very busy life and you can't fall asleep, do the lying practice. That's very good. Where even like even not falling asleep becomes a way of meditating. You're with the body, you're with awareness, not worrying about the future. That's a very, very good practice. And then, if it's possible, simplify your life. So this is difficult because life is complicated, but when you get an opportunity to go and do something more complex with more responsibilities and so on, be careful and think about it. Well, where is this going to take me in 5 years' time? Where do I want to be in 5 years' time? And if you have some option to simplify, do that. See if you can do that. I know it's not always possible, but when there are options, then really think very carefully. Where will this take me? It's going to be more complex. Maybe it'll be good. The complexity might be good. Maybe I need that. Or do I want to make life more simple? And then can I carve out a morning practice? These are the things that would be the reason that the mind, or the cause for the mind noticing the silence more and more. Ajahn Sumedho's kind of recommendation that he used a lot was to listen to the sound of silence, that nada sound that you get when the mind is very empty. He'd use that all the time. Of course, he wasn't concentrating on maybe building something or whatever, quite often because his life was more receptive. He's a teacher, so you could do that. But getting some meditative touchstone, something that grounds you, that reminds you. That's why beads, like mala beads, can be very good. They just kind of ground you all the time. Or a mantra, sustaining a mantra in the mind, takes you away from the kind of endless verbalization of the mind, the sound of silence. So meditators who try to keep a sense of presence throughout the day can use ubaya like that, skillful means, to constantly return to the present moment, the present moment, the present moment. And you get better and better at it. You just kind of keep at it. It is remember, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So over the years, you're trying to develop these simple skills of presence, of grounding, of body awareness, morning practice. All of those then have become a whole lifestyle of contemplation. But modern life, urban life, is not geared to contemplation. It's geared to stress. It's geared to exploitation of the workers and so on and so forth. It's not easy in urban life. So you have to really carve out the time yourself. Okay? Any
Thank
more?
you, Luang Por. I think that's all the questions we have for today.
All right. So shall we finish with some chanting?
Yes, Luang Por.
We could do, some of you might know the metta chant in English. It's very nice. Let's try that. This is what should be done for those of you who are familiar. If not, just listen along, and we'll close with this chanting. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be at ease, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings another, or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, free from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be a sublime abiding, by not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being free from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Okay, friends, we shall see you next time. Be well.
Thank you, Luang Por. Before we close the session, can we all pay our respects to Luang Por by bowing 3 times? Bow. Bow. Bow.
Okay, bye-bye.